Warning, if you like The Division 2, this video will offend you. All complaints about anything said in this video can be forwarded to gofuckyourself@gmail.com.
Looter shooters are definitely an acquired taste. Destiny 2, Warframe and the Borderlands series have perfected the grind to reward ratio, giving you back items in relation to the effort you put in. With these games you actually felt like you were progressing and getting somewhere. The original Division's progression system was equally balanced with challenge and looting to make sure the player always felt like he or she was getting somewhere, something that quite frankly the Division 2 severely lacks in. I personally believe that the player count has lowered in between content drops due to broken mechanics and simple issues that have remained since release of the game. If you've played The Division, you've played Division 2. Simple. In my opinion, everything other than the gear and the story, or to put it in better words, the lack thereof, are different. Massive Entertainment and Ubisoft have really missed the mark relative to their previous release. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't just going to be a complete shit dump on The Division 2. I just wanted you to understand my initial feelings towards the game. So get comfortable as we storm through DC and tangle with the beast that is Division 2. The first subject is story. The Dollar Flu virus has completely engulfed the USA, initially starting in New York and spreading to Washington DC 7 months after the initial outbreak that was portrayed in The Division. You play as a Division agent working for the Strategic Homeland Division, or SHADE for short, to reclaim Washington from multiple factions amidst the chaos. As Washington degraded, so too did the people, laying grounds for multiple factions as I previously stated. These factions are split into 4 separate groups. One of the factions are known as the Hyenas, a loosely organised group of gangs, criminals and anarchists that want to gain in the state of chaos. The Outcasts, who are a fanatical group of survivors who want revenge on those they believed imprisoned and eventually infected them. And the True Sons, who are a highly organised task force group made up of rogue JTF personnel who seek control over the capital. There is another faction known as the Black Tusk, a private military company that enters hotspots and gets the job done for a price. However, they don't appear until later in the game. Now don't get me wrong, the story so far sounds okay, however exposition and execution are 2 completely separate things, and unfortunately the Division 2 lacks in the execution of the story. If you haven't played the original Division, then Division 2 will feel like a brand new game that may potentially grab your interest. But for me and many others who have played The Division, this story is very lackluster. The events that unfold in The Division 2 leaves a hole where story should be. 50% of the story could have just been cut because it's so bland. The moment you enter the White House, you are tasked to do fetch quests. Go here, get this, kill him or her, extract, that's it. Tom Clancy games are known for their intricate and masterfully crafted stories, however it isn't utilised inside The Division 2 to the extent it should be. Characters aren't established and fleshed out enough for the player to connect with them. Beautifully made cutscenes are locked behind 4 separate menus instead of just being utilised in the original drafted story. Essentially, the story devolves into go help people around Washington. However, with the release of the DLC Warlords of New York, I hope the story that's coming with that downloadable content fills a lot of the holes that are currently present with the initial release of the game. Right, now that we've talked about the story, I should move on to gameplay. As the virus continues to evolve, so too have the enemy factions. Massive have built upon the foundations of the Division's gameplay and added multiple changes and variations to not only the enemies, but gear and weaponry, adding 6 new specializations to your already massive arsenal. This includes the Survivalist that uses a crossbow equipped with explosive crossbow heads to blow people's legs off, a Demolitionist who uses a grenade launcher to blow people's torsos off, a Sharpshooter that uses a high-powered sniper rifle to blow people's heads off, a Gunner who has a minigun that can shred through armor, the Technician who has a missile launcher to make objects blow up, and the Firewall who burns everything in sight with a flamethrower. These specializations allow you to evolve into a more lethal killing machine. Enemy factions have also been outfitted with a bunch of new and powerful weapons, alongside the standard normal, veteran and elite type enemies used in the Division 2 and Division. I can spot 3 new enemy types that you'll face along the way. These are the immobilizers, which use foam to lock down targets. This foam can also be set on fire, I believe, to do even more damage to the ensnared target. Warhounds, which are 4-legged robots that have powerful cannons to attack from a distance. The Warhounds send out a long-range EMP that destroys any electrical vice in the range of the blast upon death. And the Wireless Operator, who sends out an explosive remote control car. It's nice to see that The Division 2 adds new enemy types to keep the game feeling fresh. Unfortunately, one of the big things that lacks in Division 2 enemy types are the bosses. The only thing that varies with each boss are the designs. Each boss isn't significant and is just a tougher elite enemy. They don't really add anything gameplay wise and is probably a thing I'd like to see done better in future releases of the Division titles or future DLCs. Moving on to the weapon portion of gameplay. Using weapons in the Division 2 is just as satisfying as it was in the Division. I'm glad Massive didn't change a whole lot when it comes to the shooting, as that's what made the Division stand out in the first place to me. Every gun feels and acts very smoothly and really complements the cover-to-cover system of the game. The weapons also sound amazing and each gun is recognizable just from the sound it makes alone. Apart from the Desert Eagle, that thing's a joke. Not to mention the overall feel of each gun and how each gun kicks and acts differently. You know, just as they would in real life. Every gun has its own unique recoil pattern. You can group certain weapons in together that feel and act the same on a wider scale, but when you look closer at each weapon you realise that every gun is different and it adds to the gameplay. Hitting all of your AK shots on an enemy that's far away feels super rewarding, because the gun isn't a laser beam, it's made in a way to feel and act real. One of the Division's big pros is its guns, so I can see why not a lot has changed for the Division 2. We haven't even touched upon the army, have we? Oh, alright, here we go then. The classic 6-slot armor system is back in the Division 2, and with all the new armor sets you can get, the perks that come with each piece, as well as the set bonuses and stat amounts, really add to the whole grind for the best gear thing. The one thing that keeps players coming back to the Division 2 other than content drops is trying to get the best piece of gear for their certain build to be that one step ahead of any other player in the game. Not only that, but the amount of armor sets in the game is ludicrous. I count 18 different gear sets, meaning that you can make up to 108 separate builds if my maths is correct. Not gonna lie, you'll probably be overwhelmed with the amount of armor choices. There's enough variation in each set, meaning that you can find builds that are unique and fit your playstyle. Once you've found that perfect set of armor, there's also the stats and perks on top of it, so on and so forth. You can see where I'm going. The grind really never stops. I should probably talk about the skills now. In the Division 2 there are 8 different skills that you can use and each act in a very different way. You have your standard healing items and then going all the way to the future tech side with the drones that follow you, healing your agent or shooting enemies to seeker mines that target enemies and explode when they get close. There isn't really much to say about the skills other than they all work as expected and no skill is necessarily better than the other one. Some builds do complement different skills more than others, but unless you're using a very specific build with a very specific skill set, you could probably get away with using anything you like. I think that's everything that I want to talk about with the gameplay, so probably visuals now. Yeah, let's go visuals. Any release with the Tom Clancy tag looks good. For example, Wildlands, Breakpoint, both of those games just look amazing and give a sense of wonder as you get lost in the world. The Division 2 also does this excellently. You're able to imagine just how much devastation has been brought about by the dollar flu virus, and it's clearly visualized in the game. Body bags are lying in the street and debris is flying around from cars and buildings that have been destroyed due to anarchy. When it comes to visuals, Massive and Ubisoft haven't skimped out. Although variety lacks in bosses, each one of the enemy types are clearly distinguished and shown with clarity. Unfortunately though, Ubisoft has a poor track record of performance paired with open world games, and it seriously shows with the Division 2. To get a stable 60 frames, I had to turn all of my settings to low. Now don't get me wrong, the game still looks good even on low, but I still get frame drops. It's not the most ideal scenario when you have PvP elements in the game. Hopefully later releases of the Division titles can have good visuals and solid performance, but as it is right now, recording gameplay for this review and playing the game was nearly impossible. Obviously unless you have a supercomputer. With all that being said, guns and armor are very well executed visually wise. Each gun has a unique look that is instantly recognizable based on real life counterparts, such as the FAMAS or the M4. Every piece of armor, for example, has been meticulously shaped to be recognizable whether or not you are wearing it yourself. For example, you can see sets of armors on other players and are able to identify it instantly. If that's not good enough for you too, you can also apply camos to not only your weapons but your armor now. Applying armor camos wasn't anything you could do in the Division, so it's a nice change. A little side effect is you are going to go insane trying to find each camo for each piece of gear to make your look complete, but you know. Fashion. Skills and specializations have also been detailed to insane levels. Even on low quality, you can still see each skill and specialization to its truest extent. So even though I do have my settings on low, I'm still able to get lost in the visuals of the game. Every specialization is unique enough to be recognizable just from having it holstered. But then again, you're not going to mix up a crossbow and a minigun, are you? And again, just like in every Tom Clancy open world game, the world detail is ridiculous. Walking down the street, you can see cracks in the road, and you can even see bark on trees, and how it's presented to make it seem truly three-dimensional. Not only that, but you can shoot parts of glass, making each bullet hole seem realistic. Just like in the Division, you can shoot an outline on a car window, and when fully completing the circle, the glass falls. A new addition, I believe, is shooting monitors, and that leaves a sort of barcode impression on said monitor, while leaving the other areas non-affected. It's these details in any Tom Clancy game, but especially the Division 2, that lets you get lost in this apocalyptic scenario. Now I'm going to move on to sound design. Sound design in any game is super important, and the sounds in the Division 2 are executed well. While standing still, you can hear multiple things in the world that pull you in even further. This includes dogs barking in the background, crickets at night, or even the occasional enemy broadcast slandering the Division. Depending on the area that you're in at the time, different things will be happening sound-wise. Now in some areas sound is lacking, such as steam vents where a hissing noise should be. I don't know, it's a bit nitpicky, but I think it would have been a nice addition. Walking is also executed nicely and gives a sense of weight to your character. Not only that, but enemy and friendly patrols are audible, hearing each footstep with detail. Each step has a sort of crunch, depending on location. For instance, grass has a different walking sound to concrete, and so on. Like I said previously, the weapons are unique and varied enough to let you know what weapon it is. Each weapon has a sort of unique ping to each of the shots, and in some instances the weapon sort of clicks when running out of ammo, as if the slide has been locked back waiting for another magazine. Every casing that comes out of a gun also makes sound depending on what surface the casing is hitting, and correlates to how fast the sound cue for the casing ejection is. Shooting up against a surface will play the sound cue earlier than just shooting into the air. Bullets will also make a distinct sound relative to the surface you are shooting. Concrete will make a thudding sound when bullets enter it, just as a metallic surface will make a pinging sound as if the bullets were deflecting off it. Skills also have unique sounds like deploying cluster grenades or the spraying sound of your healing drone. Having great sound design allows players to submerge themselves in the game and adds another layer of realism that cements your game in the back of people's minds and on top of the reviewers' lists. Pros and cons of the game is up next, so let's just dive in. I think we should start with the pros. The gunplay is very smooth and well executed, just like in previous iterations. Sound design is on point and adds layers to the game that some people wouldn't even notice. Weapons, armor, skills and specializations are easily distinguishable and are unique enough so that they aren't bundled in with each other. World design is great and allows you to get lost in the apocalyptic setting. And finally, build diversity. Build diversity is great and allows players to be unique and have unique playstyles. And now on to the bad stuff. Get ready, cause there's a lot. There isn't a story. End of. I don't know how a game can be released without a story, but Massive managed it. The fact that you have to dig through 4 different menu screens just to get a little bit of extra story is ridiculous. It should have just been included with the standard game. Characters aren't memorable and you will forget them after you finish the story. The game's performance is very poor. I have a mid to high range computer and am barely able to get 60 frames on low settings. Boss variety is severely lacking and makes enemies forgetful. 60% of the game is literally just the Division with a big number 2 slapped at the end of it. Of the 8 skills, only 3 are unique to the Division 2. Also, a lot of weapons and enemy types are reused for the second game, and I can't help but think this is just pure laziness. And finally, the amount of bugs that have remained in the game since launch is staggering. The first level after leaving the barn and heading to the White House has enemy models despawn. Essentially, although they're still shooting at you and dealing damage, you can't see them or damage them. And on very rare occasions, you'll just fall through the world sometimes, leaving you falling through an endless hole until you hit some sort of floor and then respawn at the top. World objects just fail to disappear sometimes after an explosion. Overall, the amount of cons in comparison to pros is just staggering. When the game's not on sale, this retails for about £50, which is standard AAA title. What you're paying £50 for is an incomplete story and numerous bugs around the world that completely make you lose immersion. Moving on to the amount of fun I had with the game. I'm gonna be straight. For my first 20 hours of my 30-hour current playtime, I didn't have fun with the game. I felt like I was just running through an expansion for the original Division. The game adds barely anything new and it severely shows. What is fresh to the Division 2 is really nice, however the cons severely outweigh the pros. I just don't understand how an incomplete game can go for AAA pricing. With all the bugs and a complete lack of story, the game just isn't really worth picking up. I don't think Massive had a vision going into this project and it's really unfortunate. I remember being really excited for the Division 2, however extremely disappointed when I was playing it for the first time. There's been 2 recent sales for the Division 2 slashing prices almost 95%, going from £50 to £2.50. To me, this just shows a lack of stability within the player base, and to be honest, I can't really blame people for falling out of love for the game. Hopefully a lot of the promises made with the new DLC Warlords of New York can rectify a lot of the errors within the game, but if it takes a DLC to fix your game that's been out almost a year, then your game's not really worth playing to begin with. So, final score. With all of the negatives as well as the positives, I'm gonna give the game a final rating of 5 out of 10. Hopefully the game will become better over time, but for how it is right now, this is the score I'm giving it, and quite frankly, I think it deserves this score. Right, thank you for listening to my roast on the Division 2. It's really disappointing to see this game flop for me as much as it did, but what are you gonna do? If you could be so generous as to subscribe and like, I'm trying to get these videos out regularly. Hopefully the new expansion adds a bit more to the game that we currently don't have, but we won't know until March the 3rd. Right, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. See you in the next review. Bye.